this. We hope to make this an annual event at each constitutional celebrations. I think we made a start a little last year, was it? We made a start last year in the debate, but this is the first time I think we've had a debate on actually on the development of the island, both politically and everything else as listed on the board. And I think it'd be a good exercise, particularly you young folks. All right, so the format, as I've already indicated, we will follow the usual format. The first speaker will introduce the group and each speaker will speak on. And the second speaker will present the substance of the argument, and the third speaker will then rebut the argument. And then I think what happens after that is we'll open it for general discussion and questions from the floor, then a summary, and then the audience has to decide who will be the eventual winners of the debate. The topic for discussion, the topic for debate is Niue's self-government has developed significantly in the past 45 years along these themes: Taoga Niue, education and culture, ICT and technology, economic and political development, spiritual development, and one last one, climate change. Climate change. Right.
Okay, welcome here to moderator and all here today. Here we have the affirmative team. My name is Hagen. My partner in crime here is Margaret. And then we have Anna. She's from the private sector. We are all from the first cohort of the MBA program. It's currently running anyway. We have just completed our PTC and about to start on our diploma course in the coming couple of weeks. Thank you.
All right. Scan, would you like to introduce you?
Maki Taoga, thank you all for it. Thank you for me. This is my first time involved participating in such a debate class or session, and this is my team, Frank, Esther, and myself. We represent Team Students Association for ESP, Niue, and we are looking forward to provide our negativities of all those topics, and we're also looking forward to understand some possibility from our position. And I was telling Esther, this looks like a land court. So maybe we will enhance our knowledge.
Firstly, we have a brand new multi-million-dollar island building, which indicates our aim to improve awareness of our culture and traditions, and also the pass on the knowledge to the coming generations. We also have festivals. We have to talk about our culture and traditions and pass it on to those who. In doing that, we talk about our culture more, and in doing so we learn more ourselves of our culture. Also, the some entertainment as well, or traditional entertainment or Niue entertainment. That also helps with practicing local.
The population is well aware of climate change, and there's a lot of programs that's been implemented and has taken effect to help our environment, like the coral reefs, I think, the bleaching. I think there's a lot of work done to the coral. I think that's it.
All right, Margaret, are you all done? Okay, thank you. Now it's over down to the negative team to state their case.
Thank you.
Second speaker will be Esther.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Despite the fact that I'm sitting on the negative side, I'm normally a positive person.
Hey,
Last
don't
I'm
put
a
that on
person. But anyway, the topic at
Stop
hand.
trying to grease up.
The topic at hand is clearly there, but I think I'd like to premise my argument by saying that yes, there has been some development, but not significantly. And development where it is evident is stagnant in all those thematic areas. So firstly, we start with the Taoga Education language, and but it's still stagnant in terms of the legal framework in which everything is tied in, where the Education Department needs to look at the Education Act and review it. In terms of technology and ICT, it's no longer free. We had it for free for a long time. Now we have to pay for it, and yes, we have 4G, and yes, it has developed somewhat, but the rest of the world has moved on to 5G now, as we are slowly coming. And I know some very annoyed iPhone users because they can't use their iPhones with this current 4G technology. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It's one of those iPhone users. So yes, again, it's developed, but not significantly, and that development is stagnant. Economic and political development, our representation in the House at the moment, while women are at 25%, which is fairly relatively good in terms of in comparison to the region, but in terms of diversity and in terms of the caliber of representatives we have in the House, I don't think we have have quite yet got to the caliber that is needed in the 21st century in our leaders in Parliament. The debating is not even of substance. There is no substance in the debates in the Whanakepoli. And why? Because we don't have enough graduates in there. We don't have enough qualified, educated people in there to have that level of debate with substance in our politics. Economic development, when it comes to economic development as well as politics, I think we can all agree that it's not good enough, it's not good governance that's being practiced here at all. It's we have to make do with good enough governance. Some things that we're doing right, but there are a lot. I think the church is drawing too much of the resources from the limited resources that we have. The church needs to adapt to the current situation in terms of population. In terms of spiritual development, it hasn't actually developed significantly and it's become stagnant. I have one word, hikutawaki. Moving on to climate change. Moving on to climate change. Yes, we have knowledgeable people on the island and we have them in spades and when it comes to responding to the impacts of climate change. But we didn't send a delegation to the most recent United Nations General Assembly where Pacific solidarity was very much needed and Niue wasn't there. Niue didn't step up to the plate to say, look, we don't have a seat at the UN, but we are here standing next to every other country in the Pacific to say, we are here to support our brothers and sisters and push for global cohesion, because there's lacking the whole climate change debate at the moment in the global context lacks cohesion. You have the big countries like the US, China, Russia not committing, and then we have our big brothers in Australia not committing to climate change. So again, yes, there's been some development, but not significant, and access to financing. We can talk all we want, but until or unless we have access to climate funding, we're not really progressing in that area. And I know that some members of the affirmative team will be aware of some of the frustrations of trying to access climate funding at the moment. So from our side, in terms of negatives, yes, we have somewhat developed, but not significantly, and where there is evidence of development, it has become stagnant. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's some pretty heavy stuff from a very positive person. Okay, now, okay. Now it's over to Ida now put the case, to rubbish what is this? Rebut. I prefer rubbish. Sorry, your task now is to rebut the arguments that put forward by the negative team. This is, as I said, this is much of a learning curve for the moderator as it is for my fellow participants. Because next year we're going to be so big, we're going to have to hire the Millennium Board to go and do this thing. Okay? All right. Mrs. Hickey, where you going?
Thank
Shoot
you,
your
moderator.
position out of the water.
Thank you, moderator, and welcome to the audience and both the teams. And so I'll address some of the issues that have been brought up by the negative team from Negative Souls. Frank, you mentioned under the schematic of Taoga Niue culture and education, you spoke about the new Taonga building being a white elephant and gathering dust. That's actually putting down your own heritage. It's been since 2004 when they haven't had a home for all their cultural artifacts. And so for you to actually say that the museum or the Taonga building is gathering dust, that's an insult to your people. And it's a very, way down on your slope. You spoke about the Wangahau Niue elders as saying to say goodbye to the Niue language, and that doesn't give a positive outlook, or it doesn't give what's the word I'm looking for, encouragement to the next generation. And remember, your language, it's intergenerational. And so you actually see the young people mixing with their grandpas and their grandmas, and so there is an exchange of culture there. And we can see that within all the different families, especially now that young families have to go to work and their children, or the young ones are left with their nanas and their papas. So there is exchange. May be small, but remember, it is not done in one generation. You spoke about the show day, same old thing you said, it's more commercialized. So I ask you, why do I see 1, 2, 3 from the negative team always participate in the show days? Case closed. Education. I do acknowledge that there is a hint.
I think the church is drawing too much of the resources from the limited resources that we have. The church needs to adapt to the current situation in terms of population. In terms of spiritual development, it hasn't actually developed significantly, and it's become stagnant. I have one word, hikutawaki. Moving on to climate change. Moving on to climate change. Yes, we have knowledgeable people on the island, and we have them in spades. And when it comes to responding to the impacts of climate change, but we didn't send the delegation to the most recent United Nations General Assembly, where Pacific solidarity was very much needed, and Niue wasn't there. Niue didn't step up to the plate to say, look, we don't have a seat at the UN, but we are here standing next to every other country in the Pacific to say we are here to support our brothers and sisters and push for global cohesion, because there's lacking the whole climate change debate at the moment in the global context lacks cohesion. You have the big countries like the US, China, Russia not committing, and then we have our big brothers in Australia not committing to climate change. So again, yes, there's been some development, but not significant. And access to financing. We can talk all we want, but until or unless we have access to climate funding, we're not really progressing in that area. And I know that some members of the affirmative team will be aware of some of the frustrations of trying to access climate funding at the moment. So from our side, in terms of negatives, yes, we have somewhat developed, but not significantly, and where there is evidence of development, it has become stagnant. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you, moderator, and welcome to the audience and both the teams. And so I'll address some of the issues that have been brought up by the negative teams or negative souls. Frank, you mentioned under the schematic of Taoga Niue culture and education, you spoke about the new Taoga building being a white elephant and gathering dust. That's actually putting down your own heritage. It's been since 2004 when they haven't had a home for all their cultural artefacts. And so for you to actually say that the museum or the Taoga building is gathering dust, that's an insult to your people. And it's a very little way down on your slope. You spoke about the Wangahau Niue elders to say goodbye to the Niue language, and that doesn't give a positive outlook, or it doesn't give what's the word I'm looking for, encouragement to the next generation. And remember, your language, it's intergenerational, and so you actually see the young people mixing with their grandpas and their grandmas, and so there is an exchange of culture there, and we can see that within all the different families, especially now that young families have to go to work and their children, or the young ones are left with their nanas and their papas. So there is exchange. May be small, but remember, it is not done in one generation. You spoke about the show day, same old thing you said, it's more commercialised. So I ask you, why do I see 1, 2, 3 from the negative team always participate in the show days? Case closed. Education.
It does give the politicians a chance to hear from somebody else other than from the crap they hear in the debating chambers in the House. All right, now, the question is, Niue self-government has developed significantly over the past 45 years in the areas that we have identified. One of the things that I've noted, and I think it's a good point, in that some of you have grown up knowing nothing else except self-government. So you've got nothing else to compare it to. Wasn't it like when the colonialists were administering the island? So I think Lou made a good point. She was 14 years old when self-government was introduced to the island. And 45 years later, she would be able to tell you the huge amount of difference between that time and this time. But the point is, though, that was this because we had an excellent past administrations and the current administration, or was it because it was going to happen anyway over time? These things, times change, things change. But I take the point that for some of you, you've known nothing else, and you find it hard to accept that there has been some improvements. Let's take Taoga Niue and education. Taoga Niue and education. Taoga Niue. Taoga Niue is worthy of a debate on its own, because we have seen some very important developments in the town. And when I talk about town, I'm talking about our language and our culture. Yeah. One of the things now that we're beginning to see, and this is a point that's come up in the debate, is that there is too much cross-fertilization with other cultures. So that when you go to a typical show day, British show day, you're likely to see and to witness 80% of the dancers are not local. It's somebody else's culture. And the excuse is that, well, the kids who are doing the dance are part Samoan, part Cook Islanders, are part Tahitians. But we're beginning to witness hip-hop in some of the show days. Really? Language. Unfortunately, UNESCO has decided to classify our language as an endangered language. And your views expressed at this debate are now valid views. I'm told, I haven't been up to the playground in recent months, but I'm told that the language used on the playgrounds now are both English and Niue. And some people will say the predominant language used on the playgrounds nowadays, in both the secondary school and the primary school, is English. I would be very worried if that was true. I would be extremely worried if that was true. But the point also is that a living language is classified by UNESCO. Living language means that the kids are learning the language on the knees of their parents and grandparents. They're not being taught formally in any formal situation. They are picking up the language as they grow up. And they're picking up the use of the language as they grow up. And that's what UNESCO classifies as native speakers. I think we have to accept that in years to come, the number of native speakers will diminish and the numbers of acquired speakers will increase. But as a result of that, there's got to be some changes to the language. If you were growing up in Australia learning Niue, if you're growing up in Auckland learning Niue, and if you're growing up on Niue and learning the language, you're likely to find that there are those three sub-languages of Niue. We have to accept it. This stage also, in New Zealand, there's another type of Niuean language growing up with the kids there, using some of the languages that you grow up with in New Zealand. But that's, I don't think necessarily that's a good thing, that's a bad thing. I think so long as we keep the language going, it's fine. But there will be instances, I think, when the speakers here on the island maybe they feel that the proper language is here, not in Auckland and not in Sydney or Brisbane. But I think that's a policy decision that has to be decided by the government. Anyway, too much time on education. nothing more of education for the QSB. We're thriving. How many of you are involved in MBA? Yeah, good, excellent. We didn't even have MBA a few years back, so that's fine. I'm speaking as the ex-director of this establishment. ICT and, oh goodness me. The Manatua cable. What is the Manatua cable? Most people are welcoming the development of the Manatua cable because it means faster internet. The downside is it means a faster rate of contaminating our little children. So they're going to grow up with other ideas. That's another way of looking at it. But then each generation must tackle their own devils. Can we agree on one thing, please? There is nothing wrong with the 4G network. 4G, by the way, just stands for, there's nothing fancy. It's the fourth generation, that's all it is. And the fifth generation, the sixth generation, and so on. There's nothing wrong with the technology. The problem is you need a reliable operating system. You can have the best computer, but if you don't have Microsoft, it's bloody useless. That's what the problem is with 4G. I'm not talking about the Niue experience, but it's a problem with 4G, 5G, 7G, whatever G. You must have a reliable operating system. And it looks as if, just speculatively, that we've been sold a lemon in terms of the operating system. Because the other day I got an Android phone. I paid my $50. I went outside, I turned it on, and it says, sorry, you have run out of credit. I've just paid bloody $50 in telecom. However, we all have our funny tales of ICT. Let me touch a little bit, just a little bit, because I was also involved with the .nu saga. The ongoing dispute between the Niue government and the people who were assigned originally to manage .nu. The problem was that, according to the government, .nu in fact was hijacked by a very smart businessman, American businessman. And the American businessman said he didn't hijack it. The government failed to recognize the value of this asset, and so he just kind of picked it up to look after it on behalf of the Niueans. And in the process of doing so, he says, I'll give you some money to help develop your Wi-Fi. That's where the argument is at the moment. It's a lot more complicated than both sides blaming each other. But the truth was that nobody really knows the value of .nu at that point in time on the island. Nobody really knew the value of that. The American businessman will argue that he didn't know it either. He just thought he was going to administer it. Which poses this question. If the bugger didn't know it was that valuable, why did he spend thousands of dollars traveling all the way from the United States to New Zealand and up to Niue, hold public meetings, treat people to dinners? So, who's telling the truth here? Never mind. That's water under the bridge. But yeah, okay. I take Lou's point. When she was a youngster, we had one telephone in the village. Now everybody's walking around with a little bloody screen. They can't get their nose out of it half the time. Okay, economic and political development. Yes. That's all I want to say about that. Economic development, yes, we've come a long way, economic development. When the island became self-governing, we had all kinds of ideas. Remember, New Zealand was keen to make sure that this experiment of Niue in the Cook Islands was going to work. They poured money into the Cook Islands to develop their agriculture. They did the same with us. They poured money into Niue to develop our agriculture. We did, and we did very well. We had limes, passion fruit, pumpkins, zucchinis, and some others. But for one reason or another, they all failed. Mainly because the cost of transporting to the market was prohibitive. And the other thing is also New Zealand was opening up their market. So at one time, we had been able to take all New Zealand take all our lines. It's a backwash. And the backwash is the build or the tool. But we use that generally now to describe a tsunami. So, but we have a tsunami warning system throughout the island. So why do we have a tsunami warning system? Because the Australians offered it to us for nothing. And as good regional citizens, we said, we want one of those. So that's why you see the tsunami warning system all over the island. We don't need it, but it's nice to have it. But it's also nice because we can use it as a warning system in case of hurricanes. So that's good. There are some people who will say it's a little bit like climate change. We put our hand up because we want to be good citizens of the region. There is no doubt that we are feeling the effects of climate change. I mean, the weather patterns have changed. Cyclones are more severe now. But as somebody has pointed out from the audience, it's expected that in the worst case scenario, there will be a meter rise in the sea level. That would take out Abuseta Beach, but that's about it. The rest of the island is safe. But again, as good regional citizens, we need to be vigilant just in case. What about the argument that climate change is a fabrication for somebody who want to make money? What do you think of that argument that some rich dude? Yeah, some people are getting rich because of climate change, but other people are paying the price for it. It's an argument that's ongoing, not only, not so much for us here on the island, but internationally as well. But if somebody sit here and says, okay, if it turns out that there's nothing to climate change, what have we lost? Nothing. We've spent a couple of $1 billion on something that didn't happen. Isn't that good? Rather than just sitting and doing nothing. Okay, now, overall, has self-government developed significantly over the past 45 years? It depends on your point of view. And it depends on what is significant. In certain areas, yes, we have come a long way. The representation of women in our parliament, for example. Ladies, in your experience, short experience, has this island suffered from gender inequality?
Yes.
No. I felt that gender equality is an international issue that imposed on us just because we want to be part of the international community.
That's exactly it.
That is one viewpoint.
Yeah.
Another viewpoint?
We have Polynesians are traditionally patriarchal societies where women are to be seen but not heard. And whilst we do say now that women have equal opportunities, in many parts of society they are not. For example, in the religion, in spiritual sphere, women in some villages are not allowed to stand on the pulpit, even though they are fully fledged, qualified ministers. They're not allowed to stand on that.
In my village, we have moved on. We have accepted both women and men as equal to stand in front of the church.
Patriarchal nuances exist and enter into mainstream policy decision making. For every politician that's been in the House, I've never heard, and I'm sure you would agree with me, there has never been a member of Parliament who's made it into cabinet who's been a minister of finance. A woman has been made a minister of finance or minister of economic development. Those portfolios have always been traditionally held by men. Even so, the traditional portfolios for women, health and education, social welfare. Those gender disparities and gender categorization exist. It's institutionalized and may not.
I thought it was was actually quite good, and we discussed a lot of issues that are quite prevalent to the times at the moment, and it's good to get both sides. So I thought it was well balanced, and we both put good arguments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
We had a good moderator too as well, and good participation from the audience. So it was good.
Thank you.
Okay. I thought it was actually quite good, and we discussed a lot of issues that are quite prevalent to the times at the moment, and it's good to get both sides. So I thought it was well balanced, and we both put good arguments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
We had a good moderator too as well, and good participation from the audience. So it was good.
Thank you.
Okay. That was good fun. I should have prepared myself a little bit more, but I found that very exciting.
And any words of encouragement for our friends who are so shy not to be here, just to build their confidence to come next time.
I didn't do any research. I just came and just
Yeah,
gave it a
no
go.
need to-
So, no need to research.
Yeah,
Just
no
come.
rocket science. Just try to be.
The topic of our debate is, as you can see, the US government has developed significantly over the last 45 years. I think we can see there's 5 topics there. Part of the affirmative team, and we think that yes, Niue has significantly improved economically during the last 45 years, and we can all sum it up in maybe one KPI, we can call it a KPI, an indicator of our wealth and economy. Whenever a government gives out $30 for every man, woman and child a fortnight, that's an indication of our country's wealth. So Niue just gave out about $30 to $40 per person during the last flag raising ceremony. So that's an indication of health.
This is just, one of those, the culmination of all those years that you have stood in front of the church and said your launga. This is another, this is one of the places that you can use that skill that you've harnessed over the years. Bring it to a debating session, and if you have political aspirations, this is a great training ground for aspiring politicians on how to debate constructively, and how to structure your debate and how to structure your views if you're going into politics.